Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to Bayou Bets for Thursday, April the 13th. I'm Zach Ewing. Jim Derry is to my left on your screen. Jerry's here already. Good afternoon, Jerry. How are you?
Jerry.
Welcome to everybody filing in. Leave your comments. We want to talk about some Pelicans today, some Saints in the NFL drafts, maybe some baseball, some golf, anything else that is on your mind. Let us know. This is Bayou Bets. We are the sports betting show on bet.NOLA.com. We are brought to you by Caesars Sportsbook. New users can go to NOLA.com/Caesars and get our special offer, a bonus bet, a chance at a bonus bet for up to $1,250 on your first deposit. So check that out, NOLA.com/Caesars.
That was
Jim,
the
what's on
least
your mind today?
That was the least emotional. Like, just go to Caesars. Oh, you can get a. I mean, is that how you're feeling today?
I got my mind on other things. I got my mind on the New Orleans Pelicans. What about you?
Yeah, well, it's hard not to, right? I mean, what could have been? Jerry's right. R.I.P. Pelican season. You know, it's the complete opposite to last year, and the feeling that we all had at this time last year. The Pels as the 9-10 moving on. They're going to play the Clippers and fight their way into the playoffs. And I think back to last year. My son was getting married the same time last year. In fact, the Friday game was on the same night as the rehearsal dinner, and it was an exciting time. And this was just such a letdown. And the whole season, we expected so much more out of this team. We expected the momentum to carry over from last year into this year, and it didn't. And we're going to get on into the Zion thing in a minute, which is completely disappointing. And some of the comments that were said by both Willie Green and C.J. McCollum, the C.J. McCollum quotes are very telling on what's the feeling might be inside of that locker room. And, this team, we'll talk about it in our rants as well. And disappointing really isn't even the right word, because you expect so much. It's kind of like the Saints in those years when they went 7-9, and you expected more out of Drew Brees and Sean Payton and all those things, and just didn't get it. And whether we'll get it in the future, I don't think it's a mystery right now. That's where we are. Where this team is a mystery. We don't know. No matter what happens in the offseason, unless they get some great free agent, I don't know how much optimism there's going to be going into the 2023-24 campaign.
Would you want to come here as a free agent? Oh. I guess they could win the lottery and get Victor Wembanyama. But barring that, we will talk plenty of Pelicans.
One lottery
Pelicans
before.
crash out. Yeah, they have. The Pelicans crash out against the OKC Thunder last night, 123-118. Plenty of talk ahead. Other headlines on this Thursday. The NBA playoffs in earnest, of course, begin on Saturday. 4 game ones on Saturday, 4 more on Sunday. We'll look at those series odds. Tampa Bay Rays, Jim, already won today, 9-3 over the Boston Red Sox. They're 13-0, ties the Major League record. They already have like a plus 78 run differential, is it? Like, if it's incredible what they're doing.
Yeah, and I grew up the first year I think that we had cable, 1982, and I remember really getting in. That's kind of when I really started getting into baseball. And the Braves that same year, they started off their season 13-0, which at the time they were by themselves the Major League record. I think the Angels have done it, did it in, 87 or 88, 89, somewhere around there. So there's been another team that's done it.
I thought it was the Brewers, but yeah.
Was it the Brewers?
80s,
okay.
87, yeah.
I knew it was in the 80s at some point. But to start off 13-0, and they don't do it with a lot of flair. That's how this Tampa Bay Rays team is. It's fun to watch. So we'll see if they can continue on. Now, granted, they've had a fairly easy schedule to start, but I don't care who you play. You win 13 to start the season. That's really impressive. And this Tampa Bay Rays team, you got to think they're for real. We'll see how it goes.
Yeah, pretty amazing. They're plus 78. It's not just 13-0. They're winning by like 6 runs a game.
Yeah.
The best team in baseball each year wins by like 1.7, 1.8 runs per game.
And they were losing for 4 or 5 innings today, and had a big. I think it was a big 5th inning they had. It was
today, a big 7-run inning, 6 of the runs with 2 outs. It was like seeing eye singles, bunt singles, hit by pitches. They were just
amazing.
They got some good hitters, but they were not hitting the ball all that well today. But they won anyway.
Well, if you bet on Tampa Bay every game this season, you're doing pretty well on the money line.
Yeah, you are. And if they went the rest of the season without gaining or losing a run, like just scored as many as they gave up, they would finish like number 4 or 5 in baseball in run differential. Yeah. I mean, numbers like plus 75 or 78 or whatever they are. That's good for an entire season. And here we are 13 games in, and they're already there.
Well, that 82 Braves team, by the way, was led by a young Joe Torre as a manager. He had just finished his playing career.
How about that?
And so that was Dale Murphy. They had some big bats and they had some great pitching. That team was pretty darn good. But this Rays team might be better.
They are. They're pretty incredible. And then sticking with baseball, our last headline today: number 1 LSU, another Thursday through Saturday series. They open up tonight against Kentucky, number 12. It's never a week off in the SEC.
Nope, not this time of year. You're getting rolling, and they have continued their run. They had to come back to win that second game against South Carolina last week on Friday before they got rained out on Saturday. So they split with number 6 South Carolina. They win 2 out of 3 in this series. They just put cementing their hold on number 1 because that's about where they are right now.
Yeah, yep. And really what you want to do is just finish the season as a top 8 team. That way you get to host the regional and the super regional.
They're
gives you a leg up.
Way to doing that.
Yeah. They would have to fall apart. Okay, El Rey says the Pels need a free agent sports psycho. They need something, man.
Do that.
Let's dig into the Pelicans here because Jim, you and I were at the game last night, and it was an entertaining game. The Pelicans played hard. I don't think they played particularly well. It's sort of the same old stuff that has bothered them in 2023 popped up again. They can't stop anybody in the paint. If you drive in on him, it's the revolving door defense. Like you are going to get to the rim. And then the other part of that was late in the game when it was crunch time, Brandon Ingram, who is a tremendous talent, bless his heart, put this team on his back more than once this year. But sometimes, when you're getting double or even triple teamed and Trey Murphy is standing over there wide open on the wing or in the corner, I can't tell you, you don't always see it on TV. Being at the game, Trey Murphy, I do not believe, attempted a shot in the fourth quarter. And if he did, it was just one. And he was open 8, 10, 12 possessions where, of course, he's not going to make all of those. But, like, at some point, the contested Brandon Ingram fadeaway, which he can make better than anybody, is not a better shot than an open Trey Murphy 3. So there were just some things that kept popping up. And I didn't really like the way they played, but they did play hard.
Yeah, let's talk about the non-Zion part first, and you touched on it. I thought that Willie Green did not do nearly as well of a job in the last couple months of the season as he did last year. Now, that being said, obviously there are things that are going on with everyone, and you read some of his quotes, and the first thing he says, we've been through a lot this year. He told Christian Clark, health, injuries, guys being out of the lineup, shuffling the deck, stuff going on in family lives. For them to put together this type of season they put together, it's credit to our players, our staff, and our coaches. Well, the problem is, a credit to what? Right? I just thought, and last night is a complete microcosm of the year. I said this about the Wolves game, and I'll say it again. You talk about not just Trey Murphy, but I made a joke, and I had two fans look up at me and say, "You're 100% right." But towards the end of the game, Jonas Valanciunas is on the bench, and Jackson Hayes is in the game. Why? If this isn't the beginning of the fourth quarter when they're getting rest, this is it, man. You got to win this.
4 minutes left. Yeah.
I didn't understand the late rotations. And Brandon Ingram, bless his heart, he has put the team on his shoulders. But you know what? At some point, you can't force something. And he was forcing it. And to me, that's part of coaching, because obviously the thought process was, we're going to BI no matter what. And that's okay in the regular season. If it doesn't work, you lose, you lose. But you can't just force something up. You got to, if it's not there, you got to dish it off. I think he'll get better at that. He took a major step forward this year. I thought, even with the injuries in the beginning of the season, I thought Brandon Ingram got a ton better this year. It's only going to help for the future. Willie Green's going to get better. It was his sophomore season. And quite often, just like with players, you see coaches maybe take a step back in their second season. I kind of think that's what Willie did here. But again, I don't think a coach could have a tougher season and things that happen throughout the course of a season, really, than Willie Green had here. So he'll learn a lot from this year. I think this team will be better. I think they are set up to be good in the long run. But, they've got a decision to make. You either go forward with Zion and he gets himself together and you make this work, or you don't. And you got to make a decision. I'm not saying they should trade him because I don't think they should, frankly. I think that you hope that his mind's right, you get him right, but you have to figure out whether you can get 60 to 65 games a year out of this guy or not. And if you can't, you got to move on before he kills you, because that's, to me, it's not only his fault, but he kind of killed him. You got to do something.
Before we dig into Zion, let's show our poll results. We asked you on Monday what you thought the Pelicans would do. I don't know why there's a dollar sign in the middle of that graphic, but I think that's supposed to be a percentage sign. Still some optimism out there. I mean, 80+% of people thought that they would beat Oklahoma City. Obviously, this is the rare poll question where we know the answer as we show the results. The correct answer was the least chosen one. They crashed out. Only 18.5%.
81.5% of us were wrong. So there you
go. Look, but let's dig into Zion and then we'll talk a little big picture stuff. And we had a live reaction video. Check it out on the Bayou Bets YouTube channel if you didn't already. When the news came out on Tuesday that Zion spoke and he said, I'm not going to come back until I feel like Zion, and physically I'm fine, but I just don't. He kind of made it sound like it was a mental thing. He also made it sound very much like it was his choice not to be out there.
Clearly,
and so. Get our full reaction to that in the other videos on the Bayou Bets YouTube channel. It's in there. We did a live stream on Tuesday. But, after going to the game and listening to some fans and seeing how they presented it, and then listening to, you mentioned the C.J. McCollum quote. C.J. McCollum needs a labrum surgery. And not sure he should have been out there because he clearly was not himself. But I could have taken
free throws the last few weeks of the year.
Yeah, and he forced some shots as well that did not look good. He said, this is a quote, "I could have taken the easy way out and got surgery and sat and watched. I'm not that type of person. I'm not that type of player. Even though it affected my performance, I just went and competed the best I can. I'm always trying to lead by example," end quote. And look, there's two schools of thought here. One is that, look, CJ, if you were hurt to the point where you were hurting the team, maybe you should have sat out. Okay, I think you can make that argument. But clearly, the bigger picture here is that that's a pointed remark at Zion.
100%.
CJ McCollum's a smart guy. He's been around the league a long time. He knows what he was doing. He knows what he was saying. And you may recall when the Pelicans traded for him last year, Zion and he did not speak for the first couple of weeks. And CJ called him out on like national TV on, I can't remember if it was ESPN or TNT.
I think it was TNT.
And said, no, we haven't spoken. And then all of a sudden within the next week, Zion called him and they got, and that season went swimmingly from that point forward. So CJ knows what he's doing. He's being a leader here. And you see Zion and the crowd's chanting, "We want Zion" at the game. And the Pelicans are doing hype videos trying to get the crowd to be loud and give everything you've got. And then Zion, slowly walks back over to his seat on the bench. And Zion, what we figured out, Zion is making
$143,506 per game.
Per game during his career.
That's before this extension, by the way.
Yeah,
that he's going to make
more.
So
the extension makes it more. You would need NBA fans spend an average of like $105 a game when they go to a game. That researched by our producer Zoe Collins-Rath. So you would need 1,200 fans to pay for Zion's one game. You could buy
one game,
quite a few nice cars.
1,200 fans. There were what, 18,000 fans there last night. So 1,200 of those fans paid for Zion to sit his ass on the bench and watch and oh, by the way, have thunder dunks in pregame warm-ups, by the way, and perform and practice and all this stuff. I don't want to hear from anyone. I'm not going to. There's a prominent person who works for the Pelicans, and I'm not going to mention his name on this show, who was trying to defend. He's one of my Facebook friends, defending Zion and saying something about it along the lines of, well, you guys are talking about how he's hurt and you don't know Jack and he hasn't been able to practice for 3 months. And I'm like, what planet are you living on? He's been practicing for a month, unless the media reports and the video that we watched are lying to me. And then my eyes in the pregame yesterday, he doesn't look hurt to me. So, and he basically told you that I'm ready physically. I'm not ready mentally. That's unacceptable. And this team is being held hostage. There's no other way to put it. Held hostage by what a 22-year-old decides to do. I've been, like I said, I've defended it since January. And what I heard the other day is it obviously affected the way the team played, because they played with really not a whole ton of emotion yesterday. They almost won the game without any. They played better than they played last Sunday. But you can't go in front of that raucous crowd, because the crowd was great last night. And they just didn't have it. They didn't, even taking the lead, they up by 6 at halftime. And you've talked about the third quarter. You can't come out in the third quarter and play like that. They just didn't have it last night. And a lot of it is the back of their minds. They're thinking about the guy that's sitting on the bench making $143,506 a game to sit on his ass.
And look, we're illustrating a point. All NBA players make a lot of money. Okay, they do. But
yeah,
I think the point is Zion makes all this money. He hasn't been playing. Yes, he gets hurt. It's not necessarily his fault, but at some point, you got to show up to work. And if you're throwing down windmill dunks in pregame and then saying out of the other side of your mouth that you don't feel like Zion, I don't know what we're doing here. If it's a legit mental health issue where you have a fear of performing, go see a therapist, get the help you need, but then don't go out there and do a windmill dunk in the pregame.
Yeah, exactly.
And whet everyone's appetite for what it could be, and then sit your ass on the bench, while the team loses. It's unacceptable. So I think the larger point, Jim, we're at a crossroads here for the Pelicans. And I know you're going to talk more about this later in the show, but the Pelicans got to figure the Zion thing out. I don't know. You don't want to trade him. His trade value couldn't be any lower. And I don't believe you want to trade a talent like that anyway because of what he could be. So you got to figure this out. I'm not sure the Pelicans pieces fit together perfectly with Zion, but at least they're a talented playoff team. And they got to figure out if he's on board or not, and what this looks like going into the 23-24 season.
Yeah, and the biggest difference, this franchise, obviously, again, the Pelicans and the Saints are one. So the way that one side does it is the same way the other side's going to do it. They are one. So we've seen in the past that they waited around for Michael Thomas and now are giving him another chance. The difference is basketball is so much different because there are so few players and especially fewer stars that you can sit around. You can have the luxury, I guess, and see. You can see how much that waiting on Michael Thomas has kind of hurt the Saints. And for the Pelicans, they can't do that. So I don't agree with you that I'm not a sell low kind of guy. But if this franchise realizes or thinks that we can't go forward with this kid because he's never going to be any different than he is now, and we're going to get 30, 40 games a year out of him, I'm not saying you are. I'm not saying that's the right decision. But if as a franchise they get together and the administration talks and says, we can't, it's not going to get any better with this kid, then I disagree. I think you do sell low and you get what you can get. Again, that's only if that's what they think. Now, if they think he's going to get himself better and they can find a way to get him out there on the court and play 60 to 65 games, then I feel differently about it. But, one thing, I am the furthest thing from a LeBron lover, okay? I don't think he's the GOAT. I don't think he's even close to the GOAT. I got to be honest. So that's a different debate for the summer.
Come on. Yeah, we can talk about that later.
But regardless of that, I'm getting ready to give him major props because one thing that I've always seen about LeBron and that why people do think he's the GOAT, not just because of the play that he has on the field, but it's the impact that he has on his team and on the players that surround him and people that want to play with him, not just because they think he's the greatest player of all time, but because of who he is and the leader, and he takes charge and he goes out there and he says, I'm not going to let you guys screw off. You guys are going to play basketball. And he goes out there and he shows by example. And look, he's missed time throughout his career. He missed time this year. But he goes out there. He could have taken the rest of the year off like Zion did. He had every right. A lot of people didn't think he was coming back in the regular season. But he got his ass back in there. And he made a difference for the Lakers. And we see where the Lakers are right now because they're actually, they're about to play the 2-seed Grizzlies. We're going to get to the series odds in a minute. They're only like plus 120. I mean, a 7 against a 2 to be only plus 120 is saying a whole lot. And I get it that a lot of it's Lakers price, but LeBron James will go out there, and that's what Zion, and I know he's only 22. He's 16 years younger than LeBron. But you saw that from LeBron in the beginning. And so Zion, if he wants to be a star in this league and a name that people talk about forever, however long, then he needs to get out there and he needs to figure out what's going on with his head and fix it quick.
Yep, and it will be the question of the offseason unless the Pelicans get their 1% shot and hit the draft lottery and you can add Wemby to this lineup. Then that'll change the conversation. But otherwise, it's going to be all Zion and whether he's going to be ready to play a full season. So
yeah, we'll be talking about it for 6 months.
Yeah, you talked about LeBron. Let's move on and talk the rest of the NBA playoffs. The play-in tournament finishes up tomorrow night. The teams that survived last night, it was in fact the underdogs are 4-0 against the spread and 3-1 straight up, with only the Timberwolves losing in overtime, the only exception in these first 4 play-in games. So will we see more of that tomorrow night? The Bulls are at the Heat. The Thunder are at the Wolves. Both home teams are 5.5-point favorites. They're playing for the 8th seed. Do you see anything you like here, Jim?
Spread-wise, not really. I mean, I've been on the favorites except for that Timberwolves game. Got that one right. They choked the money line, but luckily I cashed out at the right time on that one. But, it's so unpredictable right now. This isn't like these teams are very well matched. I like the Heat, but I like them against the Hawks too. So the Bulls have been actually playing fairly well. They didn't in the first half last night, but so I like the Heat. As far as spread-wise, the Heat and the Thunder, I don't love it. But I think the Timberwolves advance. I think the 2 favorites are going to advance, but I think the Thunder is going to keep it really tight with the Timberwolves. I was really impressed with the way that they're playing. That Giddey dude is a pain in the keister. Somebody needs to do something with him. And then Dort, I mean, he had like 20-something points in the first half. Everybody talks about Shea, but they've got a nice supporting cast, and they play very well.
Yeah, and people forget Chet Holmgren injured out for the season. They'll have him back next year too. So OKC is
good young team.
Very good team in the Western Conference for years to come. But we'll see what they do this year. And then on Saturday we've got the playoffs proper starting. These are the Eastern Conference series. 3 of them are starting Saturday. These are series prices, by the way. This is not game 1. This is the series money line. You can also on Caesars go bet series handicaps, meaning minus 1.5 games, minus 2.5 games, plus 1.5, plus 2.5. Will the underdog take it to 6 games or 7 games? Will the favorite be able to win it in 6 games or 5 games or sweep? I mean, you can bet all that stuff. Lots of options there on Caesars. These Eastern Conference ones, we have 2 lopsided series, and the Bucks and whoever they end up playing will end up being pretty lopsided in odds as well. The Heat, I could actually see Bucks Heat having a closer money line than either of those top 2 series, just because the Heat can give you problems. So the interesting one is Cavs Knicks. Cavs minus 205. They do have home court. How do you feel about the Cavs? Another young team, kind of like the Kings of the Eastern Conference, really came together well this year. They do have Donovan Mitchell. Can the Knicks give them a run in this series?
I think the Cavs are the only semi-value on this board. I think the East is going to be super chalky. I don't think – I mean, you might have a couple good games sprinkled in here and there. And then the Sixers, you never know with the Sixers because they're a little schizophrenic sometimes. But I think the Cavaliers are, to me, the best value on this board because I don't like how the Knicks are playing right now. And I do think the Cavs get out of that series. I like all 4 favorites to win. Maybe that's a parlay. Maybe you parlay all 4 favorites to advance because unlike the West, where I think you are going to see some upsets, I think this is all chalk.
Yeah, and by the way, the NBA playoffs are super chalk in the first round historically.
Yeah.
I'm trying to look up the stat here. So over the last 10 years, since 2012, a 7 or 8 seed has not won a first round series. So it's been 11 years since that's happened. And
We'll get to where the value is in a second. That's proof.
on an individual game level, those 7 and 8 seeds are 46 and 160. That's a winning percentage of 223. So in other words, a 16 seed in the NCAA tournament's more likely to advance than a 7 or 8 seed in the NBA playoffs. If you look at the last 10, 15 years, mathematically speaking, that is the case. So Western Conference, maybe a little more intrigue here. I mean, we do have big favorites. Those are the wrong odds on Clippers. In fact, I'm going to get rid of this because those are not the right odds at all. Clippers and Suns is the 4-5, and it's the Suns who are big favorites. I kind of like the Clippers at plus 390, Jim.
I don't. I'm not going to touch that at all. I mean, I'm not telling you not to play it, but I think the Suns are going to win that easily. I don't think the Clippers they don't strike me as dangerous at all. I don't necessarily think there's value on it.
I just think they win it more than a quarter of the time, which is really what you're looking at. Yeah.
Maybe. That's about right. What I really like is the Grizzlies. I think the Grizzlies, you talk about 7s never beaten 2s. I mean, why? Because it's the Lakers? Then they've been playing fairly well lately. They haven't really. One thing the Lakers have been have had the pleasure of, I guess is the way to say it, is they had a really easy schedule down the stretch. Now that again, you still got to win them, and they did. But and I know the Grizzlies had their issues, and big guy in the middle, the 7-2 guy, is going to be gone for the series, and that hurts them. But I think the Grizzlies are one of the best teams in the West, and I think they're going to make a run. They're quietly, to me, a value to win the NBA title at, I think, plus 15 or plus 1,600. So I love the Grizzlies in the series. I put my money where my mouth is. I bet more than I would normally bet on a series bet in this one. That is definitely my bet of the first week for sure.
I agree with you on both for the series, and I think the Grizzlies moving forward have a great chance at their price. You can get like 8-1 to win the West. I think that the Nuggets are probably favored. But I mean, rightful favorites. But 8-1, the Grizzlies are going to win this more than 1 out of 8 times. There's no doubt in my mind.
No question. I think there's a great price there, so I would go get it now. It's only been going up. I think it started at minus 125. What is it, minus 140 now?
It's actually all the way up to minus 155. Here are the correct odds. By the way.
So there you go. So the people with the money who know what they're doing have put their money on the Grizzlies, and I actually think it's still a value. Meanwhile, the Lakers odds aren't changing that much. It goes to show you how much juice is and all this stuff. I still think there's value. It's not as good a value as when I got it yesterday at minus 130. I still think there's value there, though. I think the Grizzlies are I don't think they're just going to win. I think they're going to win going away. I think they're going to win this one easily. So we'll see. I haven't been right about a lot the last 2 weeks when it comes to the NBA, so we'll see what happens here. But I really think they win this one in what are these 5-game series?
No, these are 7
games. I think they win it in 5 or 6.
And if you do like the Grizzlies easily,
you can bet that,
you talk about those series handicap odds, minus 1.5 games or even minus 2.5 games to win it in 4 or 5. You do have that option at a really good price. So
or you can just say you bet that the Grizz win in 5 or they win in 6, and I think you get. I'm guessing it's probably like plus 240 at 5 or plus 300 maybe.
For sure, shop that around and see what gets you the better payday. But you can certainly make a lot more money if you think they're.
We'll put a little bit on that. It's kind of like when you play a money line and you put a little bit on the money line and then you put more money on the spread. It's kind of like that. So, if you want to play with that, fine. But I think the Grizzlies win the series again. I'm not as interested. I think they win going away, but I just bet them to win the series. I'm not messing with that part of it.
Well, that is the NBA playoffs, and we will, of course, be keeping track of that. I mean, think about the NBA playoffs, man. It's going to be like 2 months from now, we'll still be playing the NBA Finals. They go on for a long time.
How will the officials officiate that Grizzlies-Lakers game series? The only thing that worries me. Because, look, you can talk about, there's no rigging or whatever. I mean, the NBA is a little different. I've seen some things go on. I am really interested to see if the Lakers get the best of the calls in that series. We'll see.
Yeah, you do wonder.
That's the only thing that worries me.
The Clippers are without Paul George for a undetermined amount of time. I think he could come back at some point in that series, but he won't be able to start the series.
Yeah.
And Clippers Suns is the only series out of all 8 first-round series that does not have a 2-day break between any game. And so people are going, well, why would the NBA do that? Do they want the Suns to move on? They want Kevin Durant against LeBron? Like, why would the NBA make the team that's got a star nursing an injury and make them the only team that doesn't get a 2-day break? It could be a coincidence.
Could be.
Maybe it's not. I don't know. All right, NFL Draft. 2 weeks from today, we're going to do a live show during the NFL Draft. It's going to be a lot of fun. We'll have details on that in the next couple of weeks. But for now, it's mock draft season, baby. And you see mock drafts all over the place. And I am here to tell you what the best one is. None of them. None of them are good. They all suck. Every mock draft, I don't care if it's Sports Illustrated or ESPN or Bleacher Report or Pro Football Focus. I don't care. They all suck. Your mock draft sucks, okay? They're all terrible. If you want to know what's going to go on in the draft, number one, just watch it and find out. Or number two, look at the way the odds move. Because the odds are going to move long before anybody gets a good idea in a mock draft. And perfect example below is here, Bryce Young, now a heavy favorite to go number one, where just a week ago it was C.J. Stroud.
Oh, everybody knows something, right? Somebody heard something from somebody's uncle's aunt's janitor at the arena inside the team manager's office sweeping up when he heard someone say something. I mean, it's a bunch of BS. I don't even look at this stuff anymore. Again, I agree with you 100%. Look at the odds. They will tell you because the people in Vegas know. They really know. And when they find out information before anyone else because they have moles everywhere. And so if you think those line changes don't mean anything, especially as you get closer, we talked about it last year. It happened last year. It's the same thing. I was looking up something because I think, we'll probably get into it briefly, but I think if I had my choice in realistic terms, whom the Saints would draft, again, realistically, of course, go get Will Anderson. That's who I really want you to get. But in realistic terms, I think that Bijan Robinson is the best pick that the Saints might have a shot at 29. And so I went and looked at it, and there's a few sites, but there's one that's pretty good, actually, that puts all the mock drafts together. You can see the average pick number. You can see where all these different mock drafts have them. And to prove your point, Bijan Robinson, of the top 20 mock drafts, was going anywhere from 19th to 31st. No one has a clue. I mean, this team needs this team needs. So we do it we're doing one every day, but we're focusing more on the odds part of it and whether we think something's a good value to bet on. And we do give predictions on some of these things, but no one knows anything. And I'm talking about Adam Schefter and all the rest of them. None of them know. Mel Kiper doesn't know jack, by the way. He is a showman. He's an entertainer. None of them know anything. There you go. And so, again, we're looking at this from an odds perspective. And, for Robinson to be 19 to 31 is proof. And by the way, in that 19 to 31, I think there were like 9 different teams picking him. So there you go.
Yeah, I mean, the caveat to that is like Adam Schefter will find out on draft night who's going to pick whom. He will find out. But what we're saying is that on April 13th, he doesn't know. Nobody knows. Nobody, not even the teams know because they don't know who's going to be available. They don't know what trade offers they're going to get. The only team who really knows what they're going to do or could even decide what they're going to do is the Carolina Panthers because they pick first. And it certainly looks, if you read the odds, like it's going to be Bryce Young. There's lots of bets you can make on Caesars. One is over or under the number of a certain position in the first round. These are interesting. These are also juiced heavily, by the way. Like running backs in the first round, I think the over is like plus 350 and the under 1.5 is like minus 500. So if you think there'll be 2 running backs, you can actually get a good payday.
Before we move on, and I know this is different, but it shows you how they think. I got to be in an arena football league draft room when the Voodoo were here. Mickey Loomis was the general manager of the team. So with Mickey Loomis and Mike New, I got to sit in. The only caveat is I couldn't record anything. I was allowed to sit in, and that was it. But they don't, and I would imagine it's the same in the NFL and in baseball and in the NBA draft. You talk about the other teams, they have no clue. They're just like you and I. And talk to Duncan. What do they do in the war room? They sit and watch the draft like everybody else. They have their board. They hope they get the guy that's on the top of their board, but more times they don't. So basically, they're waiting until it's time for them to draft if they're not trying to trade, and that's what it is. So the Saints have, and I'm telling you right now, the Saints have no clue who they're going to get in 2 weeks. They don't know.
They don't know who's available.
They might have a core of 4 or 5 guys and say, we hope we get one of these 4 or 5 guys. Here's number 1, here's number 2, here's number 3. But they have no idea. So
Daniel's
no
here.
one
What's
else
up, Daniel? He says Lakers 23. Okay, how much money you want to put on that? I'll give you 10 to 1. Yeah, that's not going to happen.
Do yourself a favor, Daniel. Don't bet any money on it. Okay? First of all, the odds are jacked up and juiced so bad, you're not getting any value whatsoever. That is an awful bet. But other than that, it's simply not going to happen. So don't waste your money.
One more interesting note on these odds, and you brought this up when we were talking about this earlier today. They expect more tight ends to be drafted than running backs. Now, both of them are juiced to the under.
Pretty funny.
But imagine that sentence being spoken 15, 20 years ago that more tight ends would go in the first round of the draft. And now nobody even raises an eyebrow, of course.
It's just insane. It shows you how, and again, we talked in pre-production about how, and tight ends aren't even really tight ends anymore. I mean, they're half of them are glorified wide receivers anyway. So yeah, it's just the draft's whack. We cover it and we watch it, and the NFL has done a wonderful job at marketing this stuff, but I'll be glad when it's over, to be honest.
Hey, you know what though? That makes it a lot of fun. The Saints odds have only shifted very slightly since we showed them to you on Monday on which position. I think the only difference on this board is defensive lineman from minus 140 to minus 150. Offensive lineman is right after running back. It's at 8 to 1. So again, we don't know what's going to happen. And the odds say defensive lineman, but if all the D linemen they like are gone and they weren't able to trade up, and Bijan Robinson is saying, well, guess what? Then they're going to take a running back. I mean, it's not that hard once you get in position to draft. It's just what happens before that is totally unpredictable.
Yeah, and we had a Saints first pick odds post earlier this week. I think it was Spencer that did it. Then tomorrow morning at 9 a.m., I release my NFC South first pick odds and analysis and predictions. That comes out tomorrow morning. I think the only reason why a defensive lineman edge is minus 150 is because that's what about 80% of the mock drafts are showing. I don't think the Saints it's not just because I think the Saints don't need that first. I just don't think they're going to go in that direction. The Saints are usually one to they like to throw a monkey wrench into things. So I actually think it's going to be wide receiver or running back. I think more likely running back more than anything, unless they just can't do that there. But I think wide receiver is more likely than a defensive lineman because I think that's their second or third need of help. But I get into it tomorrow, and we'll also talk about it on Datitude a little bit in my monologue tomorrow.
Daniel, again, go back and watch the beginning of the show, brother. Zion should have come back earlier. We talk about all of that. We're going to move on here. We will have a little Pelicans talk again at the end. RBC Heritage the week after the Masters, the week before the Zurich Classic of New Orleans. So we've got our eye on some golf too. Victor Hovland, who amazingly has still never won a PGA event, is in the lead, and he's the favorite, pretty solid favorite at this point, plus 340. Patrick Cantlay, 850. John Rahm and Scotty Scheffler are in this tournament, but they're struggling in round one. So we've got other names at the top of the leaderboard here. And I know you like Hovland, Jim, and I have a bet in on him too this week.
Yeah, but tip number one for golf betting: don't ever bet a favorite on day one live. I mean, half these guys are only through the afternoon. Guys are only through 9 or 10 right now. They had a rain delay, so betting plus 340 on Victor Hovland would be insane. If you wanted to bet Victor Hovland, you had to bet him before, or you have to hope that tomorrow he has a mediocre day, and you still won't get great odds on him. You won't see plus 22 again. Not if he has a real chance. So, looking at this list, it's hard. It's getting harder and harder to bet golf live because they are jacking odds. They're so different than they were even last year. You could get values on day one and day two last year. It's hard to do that right now, especially if it's for a name we know. But I guess off of this list, I like Cantlay at 850. I liked him before the tournament. But again, tough to bet. Fitzpatrick at 1100 isn't bad either. I think he's 500.
Yeah, some live shifts just as we are on the air here. Hovland now plus 380, and Jordan Spieth is up to 9-1. So he's
not playing well. Don't touch him. He's not going to win this tournament.
He's now 3 under through 11.
Yeah.
So, All right, that's a look at golf. We're going to finish up with some rants. As we mentioned, we were at the Pelicans game last night, and my rant has to do with that. And I'm going to preface this by saying that I understand that people go to these games to have fun, and I have no problem with that. And I have no problem if you drink a little bit and have some fun at the game. What I do have a problem with, and I am talking to a certain, 22-year-old gentleman. I use that term extremely loosely because the guy was a jackass sitting next to me in section 301 last night. I hope you're listening. In fact, there were 3 of them, but the guy sitting next to me was the worst. On my other side was my 7-year-old son, Jacob, who learned some new words last night and then learned them again and learned them again and learned them again. And even after I asked this certain donkey sitting to my left to please watch his language, it seemed to even get worse, and it seemed to get louder, and he seemed to get drunker, and it was F this and F the refs and F that and what the F are you doing? And then some words that, quite frankly, are even worse for kids' ears, like a certain term for a cat that you might use in other circumstances. And there was a gentleman in front of us who had his teenage daughter at the game, and he did not take too kindly to this either. In fact, turning around and threatening to make it a UFC match in the middle of an NBA game. So, look, and believe me when I say I would not have stopped the guy. I would have gotten out of his way, and I would have gotten out my phone and recorded the ass beating of a lifetime that this guy deserved. So, look, when you go to a game, you pay for the ticket. I understand. I paid for the ticket too. You get to you have a certain amount of leeway to do what you want. I'm not expecting to go to a game and have my son never hear a bad word. I'm not that naive. I'm pretty easygoing about that stuff. My son, frankly, has heard the words before. He knows not to use them. But it's a little bit different when he hears them repeatedly and screamed at all points of the game. I have a right to go to a game and have certain expectations too. And if you're going to act like that, just stay home. Just stay home. And to Pelican security, who was eventually called and then came up and
NOPD.
Gave the guy, NOPD came as well, gave the guy a stern talking to. How about throwing him out of the freaking game? You know, like at a certain point, you've crossed a line. Maybe we should have called security sooner and had that happen. But when the guy's got a bottle of Fireball half empty between his legs and is screaming curse words at the top of his lungs with everything he says, he does not. He has forfeited the right to that ticket. So that's how I feel about it. And if you're that guy, I hope you're listening. And I
get
really
that bum out of here.
That's right.
Oh, I couldn't agree more. I mean, the guy was a jackass, and I'm sitting next to you. My daughter was to my right. Luckily, it was so loud in there that she didn't hear a lot of the words that were being said. But hey, we got to move on, right? Can't do those sorts of things. You got to be a little bit smart. And by the way, when you go to a game, when you get to like beer number 5 or 6, it's probably time to stop. Besides the fact that it's costing you a lot of money, it's probably time to stop right there. So anyway, all right, on to my rant.
All right, on the court, meanwhile, Jim.
Yeah, let's go back to the court. And my rant has to do with the Pelicans as well. Probably the last time I will use the Pelicans in my rant for quite a while, but it needs to be said. this team has worked really hard to get the fans' interest back. They went through a long lull. You think back to when the Hornets were here and before Chris Paul, and you'd look at the stands and they'd try to get the tightest shots they could because there were no fans in the stands. So you didn't see a lot of the stands, and there was no one there. And then when Chris Paul came, sometimes it would be the big games, there'd be crowds there. The playoffs, there were crowds there, but you'd go back the next season and no one was there again. So the last couple of years, this franchise has done a very good job at marketing for the most part, and they've been fun. But fun is one thing, and knowing New Orleans like I know New Orleans, if you don't find a way to go back and seize the momentum that you had going into this year and take it into next year and capitalize on it, you're going to lose them. I mean, you're going to go back to having 5,000 people in the stands. And, what happens to a mid-market team when you only have 5,000 people in the stands? They don't stay very long. So this team really has a lot of work to do, and that's why Zion is so important, because you get a face of a franchise. They were able to survive it when AD left. He wasn't nearly as endearing and lovable as Zion is, but, at some point people's patience is going to run out with Zion as well. AD actually has the personality of a snail, but that's a whole another story that we won't get into. Did I say that live on the air? But they've got to work. They've got to keep these fans, because the way that crowd was last night and has been throughout most of the year and at the end of last year is how you want it to stay. And there's only one thing that's going to do that, and that's the wind.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, as I said earlier, this team is at a crossroads. This franchise is at a crossroads. They had the good fortune to win the draft lottery that got them the Zion pick.
Twice.
Some of these things are not under your control. I understand you can't keep a guy from being injured. And last year they seemed to do a really good job. But it kind of fell apart on them this year. We saw the promise. We saw what this team could be if it's healthy. And part of next year is out of the Pelicans' control. They need better luck. They need better health. They need these guys to be on the court. But you're right. Part of it can also be your communication. If you're going to make all your marketing about Zion, and as I said earlier, you're going to run hype videos at the start of the fourth quarter that tell fans to give everything they've got when you've already raised ticket prices and all that kind of stuff, and then your star player isn't giving everything he's got, it's going to leave a sour taste in people's mouths. So I agree with you. It's a huge year for them. It's a big off season. And when we start talking about the NBA season always starts sooner than you think it does.
Yeah, and that's why tomorrow Christian Clark is coming on the show. First time I've had Christian on the show. Hard to believe. Episode number 146. Tomorrow morning, 9:15, all these same channels, and we're going to write the Pelicans obit. I was hoping when I got him to commit to the show, we'd be talking about, Pelicans and Timberwolves, but it didn't happen that way. But this is probably, I can't believe, last year I was talking about the Pels way into May, even after they lost. But this is probably the last time that we'll talk Pelicans on Datitude until September at the earliest, maybe October. So
NBA draft, maybe. NBA draft.
Probably not.
But we'll see what
we'll talk about it on Bayou Bets,
all that.
I doubt on that.
Yeah. So anyway, look, the new season starts in 6 months. I mean, and we got 2 months of playoffs to go, but for the Pelicans, they got 6 months to figure this out and try to get to a place where you can not only start hot but actually sustain it. So that's where the Pelicans are at.
Oh.
And that's going to do it for us on Bayou Bets.
Pretty much.
Pelican season over, NBA playoff season beginning, draft season going strong, and
no more talking about jackasses. That was for you.
Yeah. There you go. That's number 5. Zoe says that we've said that word in this show. So I don't know if Bam Margera or Johnny Knoxville is going to come looking for royalties, but if so, I spent all my money on the Pelicans last night.
Better than the words we heard last night.
That is 100% true. We'll be with you every step of the way. We're back Monday at 4 o'clock. As Jim said, he's got Datitude tomorrow morning with Christian Clark, and we'll be back Monday here on the Bayou Bets YouTube channel. We'll talk NBA playoffs, NFL draft, and much more. Thanks for joining us, everybody, and we'll see you next time.